Welcome to IVF This, episode 92, It's Not Personal. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing so well. I want to share with you that on Tuesday, October 25th at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time, I am hosting an open coaching call that I'm calling Ask Emily Anything. It's going to be completely complimentary, where you can come and get coached on any topic that you would like help with right now. No subject is off limits. Pre-fertility treatments, current fertility treatments, after fertility treatments, marriage, family dynamics, relationships, whatever, right? You can be there anonymously and use the chat function to ask questions or, kind of give a back and forth, or you can raise your hand and I can pull you up and you can be coached by me on screen in real time. Even if you just choose to watch, I cannot express to you how powerful watching someone get coached can be. Because you can see things that person cannot see for themselves, because we all have blind spots, all of us. So when we watch someone gets coached, we can see different angles and we can see how their brains are working. And it's really like a gateway into learning how to coach yourself, which is honestly my ultimate goal. I know that there's not a lot of job security in that, but I truly do believe that if there are more of us going through infertility and IVF and all this stuff, we're exposed to coaching and we learn how to coach ourselves, our experience of infertility and IVF would be completely different. Again, doesn't take away the pain, but it can help to reinforce the understanding that suffering is optional. The self-loathing, the self-criticism, the self-judgment, all of that is optional. So if you want to be a part of that, and my goal is to host this open coaching call once a month, then you need to get on my email list. There are 2 ways to do that. One, you can go directly to my website, www.ivfthiscoaching.com, and you can sign up for my 3 Simple Steps class, and that automatically adds you to my email list. Or you can go through my social media links on my Instagram or my Facebook pages at IVF This Coaching and sign up for the class there. So today, what I want to talk about is taking things personally. I cannot begin to quantify the wasted energy that we spend raging against the things that people say and do. And we do that largely because we believe that what they say and do is personal to us, right? We make their opinions and their words mean things about us. And it just doesn't have to be that way. And I think that whole premise is based on some misunderstanding. So I want to clear that up at least as best as I can. I am constantly reminding myself to not take things personally. Okay. Whether I get an email from someone that talks about how my coaching program has changed their life, or the podcast, I get a lot of emails about how the podcast has really been a gift to them and that they're really grateful and it's amazing and they're just so thankful, right? I get emails like that. But then I also get emails that's like, you are an evil, money-hungry wench, and how dare you ask people who are already spending money trying to get pregnant and have a family to give you money, and you should be giving this away for free, and people telling me how awful I am, right? I get all of those things, both ends of the spectrum. But what I know that makes that easier for me and makes me less attached to both the positive and the negative is that none of that is actually about me. None of that is my truth. The praise that people have about me isn't about me, it's about them. The criticism that people have about me isn't about me, it's about them. The praise is true for them and the criticism is true for them, but it's not objectively truth. It's not like a universal truth. It's their truth, but not my truth. It doesn't make them or me right and them wrong, or vice versa, right? It just means that the feedback people give us is about the way they see the world. This idea, this understanding, was one of the first things that I was introduced when I found coaching. It was the thing that really opened my eyes and for the first time made complete sense. And the way at this time it was Brooke Castillo, who I was first introduced to, and she first introduced me to this topic. The way that she explained it was if a person's opinion about you or your choices were some sort of universal truth, then everyone would have the same opinion about you. Their opinion about you or your choices would be the same across the board, from your mother to your siblings to your best friend to the person that you met in line at Chipotle. If that person's truth was the universal truth, then there would be nothing left for interpretation. People have their own opinions based on their own belief systems, their own conditioning, their own socialization, their own life experiences. And that's why we're all walking around in the world having vastly different experiences, even with shared experiences, right? I mean, even if you just think about IVF in general, there's a portion of the world's population that thinks it is a medical marvel and a gift to civilization. Other people believe it is playing God. Others maybe have never even heard of it, so they don't even have an opinion. Others maybe have gone through it and it wasn't successful. Well, they will have a very different view of it than others who have gone through it and it has been successful, right? It's easy to think about, well, that's okay. I can see it in that context or with a political figure. I can see it with a movie star or something like that. I can see it even when people are generalizing things that it's not about me. But what about the things that people say directly to you? What about when people have an opinion about your life? What about when people do something that affects you? Hey, you shouldn't be drinking, or you should only be eating raw organic food, or you should only be eating warm food, or why aren't you doing acupuncture, or why are you doing acupuncture? Why are you going to that clinic with that doctor when I've heard a lot of people talk about success with this clinic and that doctor, right? Why are you spending your money on that? I thought you were saving up for IVF. You shouldn't be asking people for money, like crowdfunding or something like that for IVF, because that's your decision. Literally anything that starts with, well, have you tried, right? The platitudes or the throwaway statements that people lob in our direction. Just keep going. Don't give up. You got to have hope and faith. We think it's different when it's about us, that it's harder to reconcile. But I think you probably see where I'm going with this. That's not really that different. The same skills are required for allowing someone to have a different opinion about something that is outside of you and someone having an opinion that's different about you. So I find what is really helpful to think about it this way. I am the star of my show, my life. You are the star of your show, your life, the main character, the lead, the sun at the center of the universe. This is true for every person in their own life. So when that is the reference point that we have of us being the star of our show, we tend to have an overinflated sense of being the star in other people's show. But they, other people, are in their own movie, their own lives. You are not the center of their universe, the same that they are not the center of yours. So you've heard me talk, probably at length, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, about the primitive brain and what is considered the motivational triad, or the motivating factors for a primitive brain. I have a whole episode on it if you're interested in more background, but the basic premise is that our primitive brains, the part of our brains that are responsible for all of our unconscious processing, thoughts, breathing, things like that part of our brain is wired to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be as efficient as possible. That's it. So because of that wiring, our brains tell us that the approval of other people is essential, that it's necessary for our survival. Not in those exact words, but that is how our brain interprets other people's approval. So if we require approval, then rejection is tantamount to death. So we do anything and everything, unconsciously, consciously, to prevent any type of rejection. So if you can accept that rejection is something that our brain is terrified of, and that we have an overinflated sense of importance about our role in other people's lives, it is not difficult to follow the logical fallacy that people's rejection is about us, not them. And since we can accept that the logical fallacy as truth, then we think we, as an individual, have the ability to prevent that type of rejection. Again, because we make it personal. If it's something about us as a person, then obviously we can do something that will prevent that rejection or repair a rejection. This gives us a sense of power, a sense of self-control, an illusion of control. Let's be honest. We can't control other people. I was coaching someone recently that had gotten really upset that one of her best friends had recently stopped talking to her, or that was her perception. The facts of the situation when we started getting into it was that those two had had a history of texting or talking on the phone several times a week, and they had, at that point, gone about 2 weeks without contact. So this is an important thing that we do in coaching, which is that we slow way, way down. Whenever something happens that our brain perceives to be a crisis, your brain actually kicks into hyperdrive because, right, it's trying to get out of the feeling that it perceives to be uncomfortable or dangerous. For my client, it was this feeling of rejection from one of her best friends. So we had to slow down that automatic process because when you are in fight or flight, you cannot access your prefrontal cortex. You cannot access your logic brain. All you have access to is your primitive brain, which would just continue ruminating and reliving the emotional experience over and over and over. Like that is what we consider, or some people call, the spin cycle. So we have to slow down. One of the best ways to slow down any story is with the think, feel, do cycle. Again, I have a whole episode on that one. I would love for you to check it out because it's probably my most utilized self-coaching tool for myself, but also for my clients. So my client was in this spin cycle, or I did something wrong and that's why she's not talking to me cycle, right? So when we slowed down and we really broke down the circumstances, what my client's friend had done was that she had told her, my client, that she was pregnant. I'm sure every single person at whatever point you are listening to this episode can relate to what happened. So my client and her friend were talking on a phone, and per my client, these are her words, right? She was really beating around the bush and I knew something was up. Then she said, "Please don't be mad, but I just found out I'm pregnant." So my client felt like she probably wasn't supportive enough of her friend's news, and that's why her friend was not speaking to her, right? My client made the radio silence mean something about her as a person and a friend. But when we were kind of breaking it down, what happened was when her friend said, "Don't be mad, I just found out I'm pregnant," my client's immediate thought was, why would that be something I'd be mad about? Why wouldn't you trust me that I could be happy for you? And you must think I am this broken, bitter person who is not able to celebrate this amazing news with you, right? This is the cascade of thoughts that happens instantaneously. These thoughts for her created a feeling of anger, rage. Let's be honest, rage. So when she was able to recount what happened in kind of chronological order based on her perception of the conversation, she was like, yeah, I was mad. So I probably did struggle with expressing my excitement, but I am happy for them. I'm happy for them and I'm sad for me. But I'm tired of people acting so weird around me with this news, right? That was what we got to. And again, I think most, if not all of us, have had some sort of similar experience. This is an incredibly common dynamic for someone experiencing infertility. But what was really important for my client to see, and what the goal of this episode is that people will do or say things and you will feel some kind of way about it. It seems like it's that person and what they said, but other people aren't as powerful as our brains would have us believe. Now, the stories our mind makes up, however, are incredibly powerful, especially stories we don't know are optional because we are so busy being in them, we can't see them for what they are, which is, again, optional. But when we slow down our own behavior enough to see this in ourselves and to see enough of what other people are actually doing, right? That they aren't causing anything within us. It's all about what we are bringing to the table in terms of our own stories, our own thoughts, that we can recognize that the same is true for other people. Our behavior isn't causing their behavior. Our behavior isn't personal to them, and theirs isn't to ours, right? For my client, her friend was trying to be as delicate as possible. Now, I can give you a little bit more post content because she had already had the conversation with her friend the next time we met, right? So the first session that we had about this topic, she had not yet processed with her friend. She still believed it was her fault. And then we processed through, and then she had a conversation with her friend. So once they were able to like really take ownership of who was thinking what and what those feelings were causing, they were able to have a dialogue that they hadn't had since before my client started on this infertility journey. A really vulnerable conversation that was actually a really beautiful moment in their friendship. And I think that that's what's really important to understand. We are all walking around with minds that love stories and with minds that have patterns and wounds and unhealed trauma. And so maybe what you say to one person could be the exact same thing and tone of voice that you say to another, but one person will find it completely neutral and not offensive at all. They won't think a thing about it. And another person will be incredibly offended, and maybe it triggers something within them that isn't even about you. And I'm not saying let's go around and say crappy things to people. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that we have to stop taking things so personally if we want to solve some of our own suffering, because so much of our time and energy is being wasted taking what other people think about us and making it personal, taking their behavior and making it personal, owning their responses to us instead of just being able to honor ourselves and show up the way we want to show up. And letting them have their own stories about us, letting them have their own responses to us, and knowing that those responses aren't personal in the least. It is something that they are experiencing. So I want to offer that in order to stop being bothered, we have to really do two things. One, we have to want to compassionately remind ourselves that we have a human brain. That human primitive brain associates rejection with death. We have to remind ourselves that we can even thank that part of our brain to try and look out for us, for trying to keep us safe, because that's its ultimate goal. And when we feel that gut punch because of what someone said or did, you feel it and then you go, okay, ooh, I see you. I see you, brain. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I'm actually not in any danger, right? It's okay. Nothing has gone wrong. And then the second thing is to remind ourselves that whatever we're seeing or hearing from others isn't about us. If it were about us, everyone would be responding in the exact same way, and they aren't, and that's okay. So thank your brain, that beautiful human brain that you have, for trying to keep you safe, and remind yourself that other people's behavior is about them and their backgrounds and their belief systems and their socialization, things that they learned growing up. It's not about you. You are not the sun in their solar system. You're just like a planet, or maybe like a little moon or something like that, right? And that's okay. That's okay. We can still be kind and loving and compassionate to the people that are not in the center of our universe, and vice versa. But we always want to cultivate compassion for ourselves. It's so easy to manufacture compassion for others. And I promise you that well doesn't dry up before it gets to you. You can turn that mirror on yourself and give yourself that loving and compassionate care that you so freely offer others. And that is what I want for each and every one of you. Okay, that is what I have for you today. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.